Hello. We're going to be thinking today about a coin collection, and we're going to look at coins in the Bible. Now, I hope it'll be interesting. It certainly interests me, and I have had some sort of interest since I was a boy. Now, I've got a twin brother, and we grew up together in Surrey. And we both had collections. I used to collect, for some reason, matchbox tops, and my brother collected coins. And he used to go to a coin dealer in Kingston upon Thames on some Saturday mornings, and he would look through his collection there and add to his own collection. And he also purchased this little booklet all those years ago, collecting coins, and he used to read it from time to time, and I found it invaluable with all bits of information about the coins. Now, as we look at the coins, we remember how coins came into being. Now, before we go on, I wonder if you can answer a question for me. What do you call someone who collects coins? Well, I think the correct answer is numismatist, but I've always thought a better title would be a miser. Now, as we go on, I was thinking about something that I read a few days ago concerning what they called a payments race. Now, just to put my reading glasses on here and have a look at the article here. It was put together by someone called Ali Patterson, who has an interest in media studies, especially regarding banking and payments of money. And what he did, he gathered together in Trafalgar Square 8 people, and they didn't know what they were going to do exactly, but he only told them when they gathered together, and he said that they were going to go to Copenhagen, and the first one to get there would be the winner. They all had different methods of payment. Some had a suitcase full of coins. Another could only use mobile technology. They also used Bitcoin, swipe and sign, chip and pin, contactless, credit card, and then gold. Well, they didn't know, what they were in for a start. So it was they all had to, do it on the spur of the moment. And apparently, the person who was using the Bitcoin, they only got as far as the M25. Because no one knew what Bitcoin was. Somebody else who was using gold was the actual winner. And he said what he did, this man went to a jeweller's near to Trafalgar Square, and he said he would give them gold if they could book the airfare and the air travel and everything. And so he did that, and he was the first to arrive, and he was able to have a day or so in a penthouse suite before the other people turned up in Copenhagen. He said, interestingly enough, the person who had just the ordinary coins, they got there in the cheapest way. They paid the least money, and he said, when you actually see what you've got in your hand to pay with, it makes you careful. This man apparently had worked out a speech to give when they'd all arrived in Copenhagen, and he was going to say how wonderful all the new technology is, but of course he had to change it when the man using gold was the winner. And he said it was rather ironic that the oldest system of payment, i.e. gold, was the winner. And of course we know gold at the moment is used quite a bit because of the uncertainty of the banking system and the low interest rates just at the moment. Well now, as we look in the Bible, we see that there were hoards of ancient coins. And, we come across them now, and some of the coins that we're going to be looking at, that I've collected together, come from hoards of coins. And the first couple of coins I've got, I managed to get hold of a little while ago, and I got this from Chichester, a shop in Chichester, fairly near to where I live now. And these are little Roman coins. They're not very expensive, and because the Romans produced so many coins, these are little copper coins. And when I went to a London coin dealer just this last week, he had the same sort of coins available for £2 each. I think when I bought them a few years ago, I think they were probably £2 each, the same price, but you could get two for £1.50, which I did. So I've got these two little coins here, and they go back to Roman times. So it's good to hold in your hands these coins. They come from a hoard, and I'll read from Matthew chapter 13 regarding someone who found a treasure trove in a field. Jesus tells the story in Matthew 13, and it just occurs in verse 44. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field." And so we see that Jesus likens the kingdom of heaven to something which is extremely valuable. It's something on earth, and yet of course we also know it's in heaven and it will come later on. Now, as Jesus talked about this hoard of coins, the man sold everything he had. It was the most valuable thing, and he bought the field, and then he was able to take this hoard of coins. Now, I've often wondered about, coin hoards. I've never found one myself, but there are many hoards of coins that have been found over the years. And I used to think that, they would find a tremendous, great treasure chest, and there'd be great big coins in it, and it would be like that. But in fact, I went to York Museum a little while ago, and there they had just an ordinary clay pot like this, and inside were some coins, silver coins like this, and that was the hoard. Not very many really, as we would think, but obviously it was enough, for a sort of life savings 1,000, 2,000 years ago. And so as we think back to the time before banks, we remember what sort of things people used. As we go back to the book of Genesis, we see that originally goods were bartered. Perhaps you would have an ox, and you decided that you wanted to exchange that for some sheep. And so say, one ox would be worth 2, 3, maybe 4 sheep, and so it was exchanged. But then things like that got a bit difficult, and it wasn't always easy to get the right thing. And so they decided to use precious metal, like gold. Now, I've got a bar of gold here, but obviously it's not a real bar of gold. But just to illustrate the fact that gold was used as well as silver for exchange. We know that the early Hebrew shekel was a weight rather than a coin. Now, we're told in the book of Genesis that Abraham was a very wealthy man. And we're told in Genesis chapter 13 and verse 2 this about Abraham. It says, "Abraham had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold." And so we see that Abraham built up his wealth in livestock, but also he had silver and gold, which he could buy items with. And then when we move on to Isaac and Jacob, we see that wages were paid in kind. We know, for instance, with Jacob, that when he went to marry, first of all, Rachel and then Leah, and Leah, of course, being the oldest, it was arranged that he would marry her first. He wasn't too happy about it, and he had to work 7 years for Leah and then another 7 years for Rachel. And he was paid in kind. He was paid in sheep and goats, and all the time he was working. But he must have been paid in wages as well, because he complained to Laban that Laban had changed his wages 12 times. So there we are. Right back in the book of Genesis, we discover how money was used. The coins were weights rather than items of particular values, and also there was trading of livestock and other valuable items. Now, thinking about the hoards of coins, another coin I've got just recently was this little Roman coin, the same sort of copper coin that I had before from the Chichester hoard. And this actually I bought from Eastbourne. I don't know exactly where it came from. I should imagine it came from a hoard. It was a bit more expensive. It was £11, although it's only a small coin. And I got this because it's the coin of Constantine, the first Christian Roman emperor. And you can see his head there and the design on the back. And this reminds us, it takes us back about 1,700 years, and it's very interesting to think of the hands that this little coin must have passed through. Now we know that Constantine was made Roman emperor in York in AD 306. And later on, in 312, he apparently had a vision. He saw in the sky a cross, the sign of the cross, and then later on Jesus appeared to him and said, "By this sign you will conquer." Well, some people doubt whether Constantine was really converted, but what we do know is that from that time onwards, when he used the sign of the cross as his symbol, and he stopped the persecution of Christians, he won apparently every battle that he undertook. And certainly we know that things changed dramatically in the Roman Empire. We know also that Constantine decided to use a Greek town, Byzantium, as his headquarters, and that really was the idea behind the Byzantine era. And so things became easier for Christians, and we know that that was a significant time in Christian things. Well, we've seen the coin of Constantine, and we're going to look now at some other coins, and we're going to look at the stories from the Gospels. And the first thing we're going to look at is the story of the temple tax. Now we know from the Old Testament, from the book of Exodus and chapter 30 and verse 13, that it was required that what they called atonement money, which was a poll tax, was paid annually by every Jewish man over the age of 20. and it was half a shekel, or in Greek coinage, 2 drachma. We have here a modern Israeli shekel. And it's a wonderful story because after 2,000 years have been scattered throughout the world, the Jewish people are now back in the land of Israel. And first of all, after the British mandate had finished in 1948, and Israel became a nation once again, they used pound sterling, for their currency. And then later on, they brought back the shekel. And so for the first time from Bible days, the shekel was in use. So there we are, 1 shekel used today in Israel. Well, now this poll tax, the temple tax that we've been thinking about, that we read of in Matthew chapter 17, from verse 24, was half a shekel, half a temple shekel. And it's a very unusual coin to find now, and in fact in the British Church Weekly newspaper, they had a little article here, and it said that just recently an 8-year-old girl found a silver coin on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and it proved to be an exceedingly rare half shekel dating back some 2,000 years to the time of the Jewish revolt. And so this money, the temple tax, they found a coin on the Temple Mount just recently. And we read in Matthew chapter 17 the story about the temple tax. We read, after Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the sons are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." And so Jesus wanted to pay the temple tax. And he said to Peter, if you go to the Lake Galilee, and if you take with you your hook, line and sinker, and just throw the hook into the lake and pull out the first fish that is hooked, so you will have there in its mouth a coin. Well, I've got a hook, line and sinker here. This is a modern one, and it's got a sharp hook there, and then there's this green line which is sort of invisible when it goes into the water, and then there's the sinker, the weight, which takes it down to the bottom of the lake. So Peter would have used this together with his nets. He had drag nets which they used on the fishing boats, and also they had the cast net. But they would also use this hook, line and sinker which they had with them, and they could fish for single fish from the water's edge. So I'll just take the hook off here, and he would bait the hook, throw it in with the line, and the sinker would go down to the bottom of the lake, and then the fish would be caught. Now apparently what happened, the fish came up and it had a coin enough to pay the temple tax for himself and for Jesus. Now it may seem, rather a far-fetched story, but in fact it's certainly possible and is known about today. I've got a fish here. Now, this didn't come from the Galilee, and it's not quite the fish that Peter pulled out, but it will give you an idea. And the actual fish, we believe, that Peter pulled out was called a tapir galea. And it's come to be known today as St. Peter's fish. And if you go to the lake today, Lake Galilee, you can enjoy a delicious meal of fish, St. Peter's fish. And they have fish farms on the kibbutz there, and you can eat the fish. Now, what happened was the fish would be swimming along, and when it laid eggs, it kept the eggs in its mouth. And later on, when the fish became little fish, they would swim around, and then they'd go back to the mother's mouth. After a while, when they got rather big, the mother didn't want to keep them in the mouth anymore, and so she would let them out. They would swim around, and then the fish would look for some sort of shiny object, maybe a stone, or of course a coin would have been ideal, and it would keep it in its mouth, and so the little fish couldn't swim back into the mother's mouth. And that's what they do. And so it's perfectly possible, of course, that the fish saw this coin and didn't know what it was, of course, but picked it up, and then this was the first fish to be hooked out by Peter. And that was the real miracle, I mean, it was so ordained by God that the coin came out when Peter was looking for it. Now, as we think about that, we remember that, of course, Peter was a fisherman. That was his job. And the money was paid, which was about a day's wages, 2 days' wages it would have been, and that was enough to pay for the upkeep of, first of all, the tabernacle in the early days of the Old Testament, and later on the temple at Jerusalem. Now, I've often wanted to try and find the actual coin that Jesus would have used, the half shekel, or it would have been a shekel for both of them. Now, I haven't got a genuine one, but I have got here a coin from the Temple Institute at Jerusalem. And they produced this silver coin. It's a replica of the temple shekel, and it has on the front, from the original temple shekel, a engraving of the front of the temple, second temple at Jerusalem. And it's produced by the Temple Institute because, first of all, they want to remind people that the actual description of the temple was available on coins, and so that's what they're trying to rebuild. And also, as they sell them, they raise money for the actual rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem in our day. Now, this one has been altered, obviously, from the original, because around the edge of the coin in Hebrew, it says something like, rebuild the temple. And so that was the temple coin, the temple shekel. But also it mentions, because obviously the New Testament is written in Greek, and it mentions about drachma. Now, there were 1 drachma coins, which this is a genuine drachma coin from before the time of Jesus, a Greek coin, and it was 2 drachma were worth half a shekel. And so, as it was written in the New Testament was written in Greek, so it mentions about this drachma coin, a didrachma, 2 drachma, would have been payable for each person, and so that would be a tetradrachma or 4 drachma for both Jesus and Peter. And so it's good to think that nowadays we can get the genuine coins all from the time of Jesus. However, they also say that, Jewish scholars say, that if people paid by drachma, by a foreign coin, then they would have to pay a surcharge. And I've found out once when I went to Israel about the Hebrew Coins and Medal Corporation. It's the State of Israel, Israeli government, Coins and Medals Corporation, and they produce a catalogue with coins, biblical coins, that you can obtain. And when I was there once, I got these 2 coins. These are called, here we are, Kalbanot, and they would pay the surcharge. Now, when I showed my brother these coins, I was very proud of them. I paid quite a bit of money for them. And he said, oh, they're just reproductions. So I think they probably are reproductions. Anyway, it's good to show, and I have them there, and so we can see the surcharge. But I believe myself that the actual coin that was in the mouth of the fish was a temple shekel. And so they wouldn't have had to pay the surcharge. And so that's the story of the temple coin. Jesus paid his taxes, as did Peter. And he honoured what was spoken about in the Old Testament. And so, of course, I think that we need to do the right thing, but we must remember as Christian believers that God will always provide. If we do the right thing, God will provide. And now we're going to look at the Roman denarius. The denarius was really like the dollar is today. That it's a worldwide currency, and so throughout the Roman Empire, the denarius would be used, and everybody would know what it was worth. Now, I had some trouble locating a denarius like this. I think all those years ago when my brother used to go to collect coins at Kingston, I remember one Saturday morning he picked a coin out of the tray with all the Roman coins in, and the man said, "Oh, that's a more expensive one." But he said, "I'll let you have it for the same price." Now I think it was a denarius like this, but anyway, my brother has lost it somewhere along the line over the years, and so I can't really say whether that's true or not. But I spent quite a long time looking for a denarius of Tiberius, because Tiberius was the emperor during the ministry of Jesus, and so we think this is the coin spoken of in Matthew's Gospel and also in Mark chapter 12. So that's the coin, and we'll just read the story now as Mark tells it. In Mark 12 and verse 13, we read these words. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought the coin, and he asked them, "Whose portrait is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then Jesus said to them, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And so we read there of these Pharisees and Herodians who came to Jesus with this trick question. They wanted to catch Jesus out because they wanted to get rid of him. And the question was about paying tribute to the Romans. Now, if Jesus said it was right to pay tribute to the Roman authorities, then he would have been regarded as a traitor. And the people that came to him knew that the ordinary people would be finished with Jesus. If he'd said, oh yes, it's right to support the Romans, then he would have been finished as a preacher. If, on the other hand, he said, no, it's not right to pay taxes to the Romans, then he could have been made out to be a troublemaker. They would have gone to the Roman authorities themselves, and so there again, Jesus would have been dealt with very severely by the Romans. And so they thought, well, we've got him in a trap this time. There's no possible way that he could extricate himself from this trap that we've laid for him. Well, we read that Jesus knew what they were up to. And so he simply asked for a coin, a denarius. And he said to them, whose portrait and inscription is on this coin? Well, there was only one possible answer. Caesar's, they replied. And so Jesus said to them in that famous reply, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And it's obvious that his opponents were absolutely dumbstruck. They thought they'd got him, and Jesus answered simply, and he had something to show them, an illustration which they couldn't deny. Now, we all have responsibilities, don't we, to the state. I mean, obviously, we live in a country under a government. We use the roads and schools and various other things. And so we need to pay money to the state authorities. But Jesus reminds us there is a higher authority, the Lord God Almighty. And the final power is his. And so whatever happens in our country, whatever laws are passed, we know as Christian believers that there is a higher authority, the Lord Jesus Christ. And the one who was able to baffle those who came to him with that question is well able to take care of us. You see, the Lord God Almighty has the final say, and the final power is his. We come now to another coin, one that was actually found in a hoard of coins, not in this country, but in Israel, in the Galilee, and just near to where they found the Jesus boat. I've got a model of it here. The fishing boat you may know of, that was 2,000 years old, so it's been christened the Jesus boat, and it was sunk in the mud along the shore of the Galilee, and it was found a few years ago, and it's been dried out, and then they've strengthened the timbers, and now it's on show at a kibbutz just by the Galilee. And the night before they found this boat, they were apparently driving a 4x4 vehicle, and it sort of skidded on the mud near to where they found the boat, and they uncovered a hoard of coins. And these coins were these tiny copper coins called copper leptons. And these are the coins spoken of in the Gospels, and we see the story, for instance, in Luke chapter 21. And these coins were the sort of smallest coins they had in those days. And I purchased this one from the kibbutz where the boat is on show. And so I'm absolutely certain this is a genuine coin, a genuine copper lepton that was used by that lady, that widow, 2,000 years ago. Let me just refresh your mind with the story. Let me just refresh you with this story from Luke 21. As he looked up, Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. I tell you the truth, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on. Well, as we think about this copper lepton, this very small coin, we realise that they obviously just stamped them out very quickly. Some of them were, sort of fractured, or they were just with bits missing. But because they were so cheap, the smallest coins they had, it didn't matter. And it's wonderful to think that they found this tremendous hoard of these copper leptons in our day. Well, now the story was that Jesus, with his disciples, was in the temple. He was near to the temple treasury. And there in Jerusalem, in the temple treasury, they had offering boxes, and they had things called trumpets, which were these sort of bowls on top, which went through to the offering box, and people would throw their money into these boxes with these conical shapes on top, and that would be used for the ministry of the temple. Now, Jesus saw the rich people going in, and obviously they had, lots of money, and they would perhaps, stroll in and just throw their gold coins into the offering boxes. But then he also spotted this little old lady, this poor widow. He saw her come up, and she didn't really want anybody to see what she was putting in, because she was just putting in these 2 copper coins, worth hardly anything. And Jesus called his disciples to him, and he said, you know what, this little old lady has put in more than all these other rich people that are passing by, because she has put in everything she has. Now, some people say, I can only afford my widow's mite. Well, really, that misses the point of this illustration of Jesus. You see, the widow's mite was everything that she possessed. And she put more into the treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty. She put in everything, all she had to live on. Now, we know that we need money to live, and we want to obtain money in order that we might pay for essentials, and that's right. But the thing is, have we given all of our lives, all that we are and all that we have, into the hands of Jesus? Have we given all to our wonderful Saviour? Well, these little coins were crudely struck and irregular in shape. The others, the rich people, had made a big show of giving. Well, Jesus didn't praise the rich, he praised this little old lady, and her story is still told today. And so may we think of that lady, that poor widow, with her mite, that coin, and may we say that we will serve Jesus. We will give everything to him, that he might use it as he sees fit. Nobody, I've found over the years, will be in debt to the Lord. Nobody can be a debtor to the Lord. As we give, so he gives to us. And it's up to us just to come before the Lord and say, Lord, what would you like me to do with my life? What would you like me to give to you in order that your kingdom might go forward? Thank you.